Welcome to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to give you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
This episode is brought to you by Blue Blocks. Blue and green light is destroying our sleep, hormones, and performance, and that's why it's important to wear blue light blocking glasses. But did you know that all blue light glasses aren't created equal? I personally have started wearing Blue Blocks blue light blocking glasses, as they are the only blue light blocking company in the world that create evidence-backed lenses for filtering blue and green light. Their Australian lab-built lens technology is fitted into the most fashionable frames, and they even can make prescription and reading glasses in their optics lab. Whether it's their Sleep Plus glasses that block 100% of blue and green light, their Summer Glow mood booster glasses, or their blue light computer glasses, Blue Blocks has you covered. I wear my Sleep Plus glasses 2 to 3 hours before bed, and my sleep has never been better, and I feel so well rested. The daytime ones are also great at reducing digital eye strain, headaches, and lowering stress. With free and fast worldwide shipping using code SUPERHUMAN at checkout, now is an amazing time to level up your sleep and eye health. Just go to blueblocks.com, that's BLUBLOX.com, and enter code SUPERHUMAN to save 15%. Greetings, SuperFriends, and welcome to a very special episode of the show. Guys and gals, today I am joined by Mark Victor Hansen. He has sold over 500 million books. He's best known as the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, but he actually has written over 309 books. He is known for his endearing and charismatic style, his influence in the world of entrepreneurship. You've probably heard of some of his other books, including 1 Minute Millionaire. He's known for having spoken to over 6,000 audiences worldwide on a wide variety of topics, and he actually studied directly under Buckminster Fuller, one of Einstein's greatest students. He has a lifetime of entrepreneurial success, alternative energy pursuits, and much more. I encourage you to check out his list of 309 books, as well as his appearances on Oprah, CNN, The Today Show, Time Magazine, USA Today, The New York Times, and much more. In other words, Mark is probably one of the most superhuman authors on the planet. And in this episode, I wanted to learn not only how that is possible and how he has achieved so much, what are the mindsets, the tools, the tactics, and techniques, but I also wanted to learn what his message was for all of you during these admittedly challenging times. The conversation was absolutely fascinating, veers more on the side of entrepreneurship than we normally go. But I think that's what people need to hear right now in these challenging economic times. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode with my new super friend, Mark Victor Hansen. Mr. Mark Victor Hansen, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
My pleasure. Thank you. I am in delight, and it looks like we got clear skies here in Scottsdale, Arizona, which we haven't had because of a lot of fire damage in the West until today.
Wow. Well, that's already an improvement to wake up to clear skies.
Well, it is, because you can breathe again. It's tragic what has happened in California and Oregon and Washington, in our great country.
Absolutely insane. Mark, I'm really excited to chat with you. You know, you and Jack are one of my mother's probably favorite authors. So I feel like the pressure is on today for me to really get a great interview. I would love, though, for the three people in the world who don't know about you and your work, I would love if you shared a little bit about your story, where you came from, who you are, and how you got to be that person.
There's so much to the story. I don't know exactly where you want me to start, but if you want me to start at just Jack, Dr. Jack Canfield was third in his class at Harvard. He and I are talking to 6,000 people separately. We'd not met in the Mandala Conference in San Diego in 1988. And I'd watched him talk early in the morning, and I'm talking as the last speaker. I'm the tie-up speaker that day. And after I'd sold a gazillion books of a little book I had out called Dare to Win and A Future Diary, he comes up to me after I'm shuffling and says, Hi, I'm Jack Canfield. I said, I know who you are. You wrote 101 Ways to Build Self-Esteem in the Classroom. He said, boy, I really was blown away with what you had to say about how to outperform yourself totally. Can we go to dinner? And we went to dinner. We had what is euphemistically called, if you watch the film, a Vulcan mind meld. And he said, you got to teach me how to do short stories because you're the best storyteller I've ever heard. And I said, well, thank you very much. I'm honored. Anyhow, we decided to do the Chicken Soup series. 144 publishers all said, hit the road, Jack. And I said, look, I'm a nice guy. Jack's brilliant and wonderful and very sociable and a dean of self-esteem. But after they turned it down, we went to the Book Expo in Anaheim, California. 60,000 people in the book business. And because my parents were illiterate Danish people, not they weren't smart, they just didn't. English as a second language, it didn't exist in the 30s and 40s. It just didn't exist. So, they didn't really get to learn and read. So we didn't have any books in my house. When I got addicted to books, at 16, I went, oh my gosh. And now I'm suddenly at a place with 60,000 other authors and publishers and bookstore owners and agents. And I thought, I've died and gone to heaven. And every booth turned us down except the last one after 3 days of hustling ourselves. Little company called Health Communications, which we didn't know was bankrupt at the time. $17 million upside down. Said, well, we'll take it if you buy 20,000 at $6 each, just because they wanted to see if they could limp along a day. And then they didn't believe that, I had written down we're going to sell $1.5 million in a year and a half, and we did that basically, and then $5 million and $10 million and $15 million a year, all of which got Guinness Book of Records, because no one believes anyone could do that. But if you really market what people want, and we tested it, it worked, and now we've sold 500 million books. I think that's an okay start. And then the only other thing, because your mother loves my books, bless her, thank her for Jack.
I will.
We're in 87% of the households in America, and what's a mind blower is we're as popular. We sold 374 million books in China, and I'm the best-selling author of like One Minute Millionaire in Vietnam, and I'm trying to keep communism out of Vietnam and keep capitalism in. So I'm very pro free enterprise capitalism. I don't know if you're in that space or not, but I would assume so, being where you live.
I am a serial entrepreneur and proud capitalist. I do want to ask, Mark, you mentioned it as if you were born an author, but there was an interesting point that you mentioned. You grew up in a house where books were not, as they were in my house, kind of sacred. Tell me about that journey going from being, the son of two immigrants to realizing at the age of 16 the magic of books. I think this is something you and I share, that we just think books are like the greatest cheat code to a happy, healthy, successful life.
Well, I can wax on, but here's what happened. My parents weren't anti-books. That's not the position they were in. They were just, my daddy owned a little Danish bakery, and you make 5 cents a roll. And he assumed that I'm one of 4 boys. One of us would take over the bakery. And I said, Dad, I don't know what a white glove guy is, but I worked for you in the bakery, and I love you, and I love the pastries you make, not knowing how dangerous sugar is to your body for diabetes at all. But at that time, I didn't know. I said, I think I want to grow up and be a white glove guy. And then at 16 years old, I had this English teacher, and I was really good at writing, and I didn't know it yet, but in storytelling, my mother was a master storyteller. I mean, she never had the shot at what I've had, but I watched her wax on poetically. But then this teacher at 16, John Reinhardt, was so magnificent. He had us read omnivorously. I love that word. And voluminously. And he said, look, every one of you is going to be a polymath, meaning that you're going to have lots of variegated subjects that you want to study and know. And he would make us watch TV, read the Newsweek and Time, and interface all that with reading Shakespeare or Greek mythology. And the guy just woke up my mind at levels. And then, my younger brother, who is really, all my brothers are bright, but this little guy he was shorter than I am, but grew up and become a famous, successful man himself, Brian. But we go over to Mr. Reinhardt's house with his wife, and his wife said, the only reason John doesn't have books in the ceiling is because they won't stick. I mean, this guy had books everywhere. And I was so fascinated, because my parents had to work so hard. They didn't get to do culture. I didn't get to do sports. I had to work since I was 9 years old selling greeting cards and everything. So I love entrepreneurship. I love making money. I love building businesses and being philanthropic. But John Reinhardt just got me to go. And then I'm 16 years old in this class, and it's sort of an advanced English class, I guess you'd call it in America. We got some other words for it, but I'll leave it at that. And it's 2:30 in the afternoon, and over the PA comes John Kennedy has just been shot. Man, I'm telling you, no one could hold back the tears because we'd been studying Camelot and King Arthur legend, and John Reinhardt said, "Ladies and gentlemen," he always addressed us politely, "You're going to call your parents and we will stay as long as you want until we talk about everything about the president who's just been killed." And I couldn't believe it. Boy, we stayed until 6:30. And this guy just opened up the soul of reading and the soul of thinking and the soul of being. I mean, I think I have every book on John Kennedy, and I'm friends with Robert Kennedy Jr. nowadays because I just travel so much and in so many businesses. But it is, and I think the world of his rigorous thinking, and obviously we've talked and I've tried to help him with a couple of things. So it is amazing. Books can open your mind, and then if you start studying something, you become a mentee, and then you find out what they read, and you read all that, and you just keep getting expanded and expanded. And you and I are here. I'll finish with this. Two things. If you read the first chapter of Genesis 1:28, it says you're here to create, and then if you're here to create, what are you here to do? You're to contribute. So the two C's are, I believe each of us is a lifelong creator and contributor, and the only way to do that is be a leader by reading avidly, widely, expansively, and controversially. How's that? I never said that before, but I think that's correct too.
I think that's more correct today than ever before, is just to read so diversely and widely and educate yourself, because our sources of information are they're not pure. They're not sources of information for the sake of sources of information. So many of us get our news from people who are more interested in selling us advertisement than fact and unbiased
and propaganda.
Truth. Yeah, absolutely. Now, does that mean that
bias? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to walk over you, Jonathan. My apologies.
No, by all means. I wanted to ask, did you then go from Mr. Reinhardt's class and say, I'm going to be an author, and start your career out as an author?
Okay, so I've never told this story in any podcast, so I'll tell you what happened. So Reinhardt gets us to be enculturated and young, sophisticated guys, and the Beatles had come out at that time. This is 1962 or 3, and I started a rock group in 2 weeks. We're making a fair amount of money, and pretty soon we're making union wage, $17 an hour. And then I'm starting to book my own rock concerts and making $5,000 a night, more in one night than my dad was making. I had a car and a motorcycle and a girlfriend, and we're just having a time of our life. And we're going to plays and stuff. And one day we decided during senior skip to go to a play that John Reinhardt recommended to us, Gary, all 8 of us. And one guy skipped out. He wouldn't go, and he wouldn't skip senior skip, but he had announced to everybody that we were skipping school. So all of us got detention. I don't know if you call them that in Israel or not, but we got detentions and we had to go after school. And you're not allowed to talk in detention. But because I loved to write already at 16 and was writing songs and everything, I wrote all this little love letter. Or I was hitting on the girl next to me. And she wrote back, "I hope the swamps of Rangoon back up in your throat and choke you to death." And I thought, wow, this is great that you could write and get somebody evoked that much emotion. And then she handed it around to the other 40 people that were in detention with us. And they all said, write more. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. This is cool. Because I just, I was letting my imagination go wild. And imagination is Einstein, my teacher. In graduate school, I was with Dr. Buckminster Fuller, who was Einstein's best student, arguably. But Einstein said imagination is more important than facts. We just had a presidential candidate that said it's more important than the truth, but he didn't have the quote right.
Wow. So you knew from a very early on age that you wanted to write. Tell me about the
Yeah.
first books that you wrote. And because today you're known for short stories, you're known for personal development books, you're known for business books, you're known for your, one of your latest books about why everyone should write like you did. But where did you start? Where does someone who just graduated high school say, okay, I have a gift for writing. What am I going to write?
Well, it was, what happened is it a little different than that. In graduate school, I was with this guy, Bucky Fuller, who invented geodesic domes and wrote 40 books and had 15 doctorates at Harvard. And when I heard him talk, I was going to be a doctor of physiology. And all of a sudden I'm listening to this guy, the head of physiology. Our university hired everybody who got fired. Remember, this is 50 years ago, got fired at Harvard, Wharton, Yale, and Stanford. And Southern Illinois University's president, brilliant guy, Delight Morris, Dr. Morris hired all of them. The geniuses, the Nobel Prize winners. So I had this glorious graduate school, and the guy that was head of physiology for NASA is this guy, Alfred Richardson, and I was just a devotee. I mean, this guy knew everything, it seemed to me. And then he said, one day, you're not going to go to class anymore. You're going to go hear Buckminster Fuller talk for about 8 hours, the smartest man ever and a senior advisor to National NSA, our space program when we were still going to the moon at the front end. Now, I'm on the board of back to space these days, but it is fascinating. Bucky says we're going to talk about cosmogony, cosmology, epistemology, synergetic, energetic math. I'm sitting there. Do you know Nathan, the great word Jonathan, sophomoric?
I do, but define it for me a little bit better, a little clearer.
It means you're a sophomore in college and you just think you know every dang thing that there is, and you're smarter than your parents, smarter than your teacher.
Right.
You're listening to the hip music, back then. Anyhow, so I just thought I was cool. And then all of a sudden I listen to this guy who's 71 and I'm 21 and I go, oh my gosh, I don't know anything. So I begged to work for Fuller, and then I tried to be Fuller, and I'm building geodesic domes in New York. I built Wall Street Racquet Club, botanical gardens, houses, but I was building out of PVC, polyvinyl chloride plastic, at exactly the wrong time in history. It's 1974. The Arabs said, we can write checks so big your banks will bounce. We are not allowed to buy but a gallon of gasoline at the time when you go to a gas station. And I suddenly couldn't. I was doing $40,000 worth of plastic buying a month, and I suddenly couldn't get any and I went bankrupt. And I learned, I've written a book called Ask, The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. But if you ask the wrong question, you go the wrong direction. I asked, what if I go bankrupt? I checked a book out of the library, How to Go Bankrupt by Yourself. And it was like my best, worst experience, because for 6 months I want to kill myself because I thought my net worth and self-worth were the same. I thought, holy cow, I got a $2 million company. I'm a 26-year-old. I'm hot stuff. And the problem is that now I'm bankrupt. And luckily, 6 months into it, I said, what do I really want to do? Because we're teaching and ask. You got to ask yourself, ask others, ask God. And I said, I really want to talk to people that care about things that matter, that make a life-changing difference. So my roommates say, look, there's this young guy speaking. I watched this guy speak in Hauppauge, Long Island, New York, Chip Collins. He became my best friend and mentor. But he taught me how to do the business and life insurance. He wanted to keep the real estate market for himself, which he was a wow. And suddenly people kept coming up to me and say, do you have that great story in a book? And so the first book I do is called Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win. And I sold 20,000 copies in 1 year from the platform at $10 each, self-published. And I said, this isn't a New York Times bestseller. It's not a national bestseller or an international bestseller, but it's my bestseller. And I'd like to autograph it to you. And they all bought it. And I sold 20,000 copies, made $200,000, tripled my income, thought I'd died and gone to heaven. And my book career was launched, I'll tell you. So I've never stopped selling books in 44 years. And just, I am sort of I love the word incessant. I'm an incessant writer, I guess. I got, people say, do you ever have writer's block? I said, I learned from Steve Allen that you ought to be writing 10 or 20 things at a time. He wrote 28 books at a time. He said, that way you never have writer's block. So I'm writing about 12 right now. And they're all important. That's what's amazing, because once you, back to your first question, at least as I understood your first question, when you wake up your mind, you wake up your life. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Well, I like it. So I hope I didn't over-answer your question.
No, not at all. In fact, there was a huge tip there, which gives me a nice direction for what I want to get into with the superhuman element of the interview, which is writing 309 books is a truly superhuman feat. Now, you just revealed to us one of your superhuman hacks. I mean, a normal normal, if there's such a thing as a normal episode of this show, we're talking about the different hacks that people do and the meditation and the exercise. You just revealed a really, really big hack, I think. And I want to underscore it a couple times here. You're writing 12 different books at once so that you're never blocked. And I imagine that's because sometimes you get tired of working on one book, but you want to keep forward progress and momentum. So what I take, and I want you to correct me if I misunderstood this, you got a lot of pots in the fire so that you can always go in the direction of your creativity, your passion, your enthusiasm, and you're never stuck being forced working on something that right now you need a break from.
I could accept what you say, except let me do it a little bit different. It comes
Please.
to me at a little different level. Okay, so my minister in New York was a mega church. If I wasn't a professional, motivational, inspirational, educational speaker, I would have been a mega church builder and had 40 or 50,000 people coming to my church a Sunday probably by now. That obviously I'm in my right livelihood 100%. I feel, but so what happened is this guy died. He lived up in Harlem. His kid just wrote a book and sent it to me. And I really love this guy. His name is Dr. Frederick J. Eichenkotter. It won't mean anything to you because, unless you were in New York at the right time when he was filling Madison Square Garden and all that, if that means anything to you. But he was the giant, like a guy like a Billy Graham, except he's black. And so he's not really known. So suddenly his son, who I've known for, 40 years, wrote his biography on Dad. And it arrived 2 days ago. I spent Sunday afternoon 2 hours. I read through the book because I, sort of knew this story, and I knew all the characters because I was sort of famous in the black marketplace. Even though I'm white, I am probably one of the more famous guys that has not a racist bone in my body and was totally accepted and am and have phenomenal friends in that tribe, so to speak. Anyhow, he sent me the book and I read it and I went, boy, I could sell this, but because he wants help. But I think I need to write an ancillary book that really shows who his dad is, because his dad took people out of poverty. He said the best thing you can do for the poor is not be one of them and stuff like that. Great classic lines. And I thought, wow, if I write another book that's ancillary to this with this kid's name, Xavier, and then his mom's name's Eula, have mom do it, I could suddenly change it, and it could really help the black culture right now, because the black culture is doing silly stuff. I'm being very judgmental here, but Black Lives Matter is a Marxist group if you look at their real stuff and who's running it. And I'm opposed to Marxism, socialism, communism, fascism, and I don't mind saying it and shouting it, because they're all, they were tried, tested, and terrible systems. Whereas this guy wanted black people to understand the real power, at least in America, is green power. And you'll get respect and admiration and grow, and you need to learn your whole life long. And he had all these great principles, but he wowed me. He got me out of, when I went bankrupt, this is a way long story for you, but when I went bankrupt, he taught me that, I ought to be thinking about how to be one of the most prosperous guys in the book business and have real respect, admiration to get some stuff done. And I define an entrepreneur as finding a problem, fixing it for a vast profit. And so I said, that's what I do, and that's what I've done. And then last part of that is that I believe in multiple sources of income. So I also believe you ought to have multiple books on subjects that you believe in. And there's so much stuff, like I said, when you start to be an omnivorous reader, an all-inclusive reader, you really gain a grasp on some stuff that needs to be done. And I wrote a book called Grow Rich in Your Niche once with the world's greatest marketer. There's niches that no one else sees. And for whatever reason, I don't think they're hidden. I just see them and I go, wow, I could write to that and sell 1 million books. And I know that writing this thing about the minister who's passed away will sell millions to the black market because they know him, but no one really knows him and knows the principles. And today we need to teach entrepreneurship in every marketplace, young, old, Hispanic, black, everybody. I want 4 billion people that aren't included in the economic equation around the world to be included. Well, unless you tell me somebody is written to that, I don't know it. I know people are working on water and wells and getting rid of cataracts and poor people in Indonesia, all that. But I don't know anyone who's trying to comprehensively bring up the whole economic system at once. So suddenly I got another book that I didn't plan on doing yesterday, and I jotted down the notes of what we'd do. And my wife said, yep, I think you better do it. And it's, and she writes a lot with me. So it's not a question of competition. Did all that make sense?
It definitely made a lot of sense. And I love that you're seeing it really also in a diversification perspective that you got, and I see that you mentioned it from a financial perspective, but I see that also in, you keep saying be an omnivorous reader. I think people I teach accelerated learning. That's my main business, right? So I teach people, if you want to learn all this stuff and you have all this passion and creativity and you want to learn because you are passionate about getting that next degree or having that side project or starting a business. And one of the issues I find that people make is they try to be monogamous in their learning. And they say, no, I decided I'm going to learn piano. So I'm going to sit at this damn chair and I'm going to learn piano, and anything else that I get excited about is a distraction. If I decide I want to learn French, that's a distraction. But the truth of the matter is you grind yourself to a bore. And what you really need is sometimes a refresher. Sometimes you need to, when you have the passion and curiosity, whether it's to write or to learn, capture that. We talked about entrepreneurship. The classical definition, an entrepreneur is someone who takes resources to a lower level of value to a higher level of value. And one of the most precious resources, in my opinion, on the planet is human ingenuity, drive, and creativity. When you have that, don't squander it by forcing yourself to work on a project, that you're not excited about right now. Put it down, work on what you are excited about.
Good. So let me talk about that, because you're into accelerated learning, and I've been into that for my whole life. It appears to me, and I'd love you to discuss it or argue it if you want, and say there's another perspective than the one I've got. But back when I started the rock group when I was 16, because the Beatles came out and they had the girls, the money, the fun, their travel, doing all the cool stuff, I said, well, I'll start a rock group. So I started the Messengers, called my best friend. He said, what do you play? I said, nothing. What do you play? Nothing. I said, good. Then we're qualified. Look at Ringo. And Ringo's a great percussionist, drummer. But the fact of the matter is, the Beatles inspired me. I wanted to do it. I talked to Gary Youngberg, the guy who I recruited first. He was a great singer, and ultimately we got the first electric organ in America, which to you is just old hat, but because you're so much, you're half my age. The point is that we learned 50 songs in 2 weeks. Now that was accelerated learning. Now it was the desire to be a musician. And the point is, there were no rock stars at the time. Remember, this is 1962 or 3, and rock music was just at its infancy. So we could play everywhere. We played 5-6 days a week and got full pay, and we're having a ball. But the accelerated learning came because we had a burning desire. Is that what you teach in accelerated learning?
That's the first step. Yeah, one of the first steps I do in any one of my courses is writing down, like, why does this matter to you? Because as we talked about, this motivation, drive, passion is such a precious resource, and you have to cultivate it. And I always tell people, when people ask me about starting a business, for example, I always ask them, what is your why and why are you doing this? Because profit is a great motive, but you and I'm sure in your years of experience, it's not enough. Right? At the end of the day, it's not enough. It has to be more. And the same is true with learning. It's not enough to say, well, because I want to know French. Well, what are you going to do with the French? And how are you going to use it? And how is it going to provide benefit to you or the people that you love? And how is it going to help you build deeper relationships? So that's one of the first steps we talk about in all of our accelerated learning programs, is really channeling the why. And Mark, it's actually the case that your neurochemistry changes when you do that. Your brain becomes more attentive, more plastic, more focused when you do that, when it knows why. This is one of the first things Malcolm Knowles discovered in the 1950s, that the adult brain, children, you can tell them, hey, this is going to be important one day. And up to a certain age, they will do it because mom says so. But along about when the brain starts maturing, they go, wait a minute, when am I ever going to use this? Why am I going to use this? And the adult brain wants and needs to know that there's a practical and pressing application of what they're going to do and use.
I like it. I agree with everything you've said.
Hey, listen up and don't skip over this. I want to let you know that I am giving away completely free copies of my latest best-selling book, The Only Skill That Matters. This book is going to teach you how to upgrade your memory, read faster, learn more, and conquer your dreams. And it contains all new content written for 2020. Now, again, I am giving away completely free copies of this book. All you need to do is pay shipping and handling. So to pick up your free copy as a listener of this podcast, visit freelearningbook.com. That's freelearningbook.com. Now, I want to talk more about your books. I also want to talk, you have one book, if I'm not mistaken, and I am a memory expert, but I haven't taken the time to memorize 309 titles of your book, so I hope you'll forgive me.
Shame on you.
Right? You do have a book on lifting up people's spirits and mindset during challenging times, and I think it would be remiss if we didn't talk about that a little bit in this interview. Hit me with the title of the book again.
Ask, A-S-K, exclamation mark, ask, the bridge from your dreams, and everyone's got lots of dreams, to your destiny. And I'm saying if you're alive, you've got a destiny. And we're in the most bizarre, surrealistic time in history. We've had more change in the last 7 months than the last 70 years. And it's been by government-imposed lockdown that may or may not have been I can talk to both sides of this because you're interested in that kind of stuff. But let me just stay in the book. The point is that if you're alive, you've got a destiny, and the only way you can get it is what Socrates said: the unexamined life is not worth living. So what my wife and I did, we've traveled around the world to 80 countries together and been everywhere, talked to wonderful people that are educated, sophisticated, personable. But the difference between, Jonathan, those who succeed a little and those who succeed a vast amount is one thing and one only: they have the ability to be what we call master askers. And nobody ever did it. So we wrote down we got out of every time we were in a trouble. Like when I went bankrupt, I asked myself, what do I want to do? That's, you ask yourself, then you ask others. I asked my 3 roommates, I said, do you know anyone that's not a medical doctor, lawyer, famous person, celebrity, and it's still young, making a lot of money as a speaker? And they said, yeah, this kid, Chip Collins, who I told you I went out and listened to him, mesmerized 500 people. And then I asked Chip, I said, can I take you to lunch and learn how to do it? He said, look, kid, the chance of you making it in this speaking business is 1 in 1,000. You're not going to make it. But if you'll stay out of real estate, which is a market I own in the 5 boroughs of New York, I'll teach you how to do it in life insurance. And sure enough, he did. And he became my mentor, and we met every week and masterminded on it. But the bottom line is I did 1,000 talks a year for the first 3 years in the business, because I believe if you want massive success, you got to take massive action. And I think that's the best way to accelerate your learning curves. And only Tony Robbins and I, as far as I know, and of all the speakers I've talked to, and I've talked to thousands literally around the world, ever did 1,000 talks a year for the first 3 years. I mean, you get pretty good because you find out what works and doesn't work if you're doing 4 or 5 talks a day. Little talks, maybe half hour, an hour, and in between time I was selling the next seminar because I got a directory to everybody in the life insurance business, and they all need training, and most people didn't have it, and I was willing to learn it. And I had a fast learning because when I got into selling it, I didn't know what a life insurance was. I didn't know what a premium. I didn't know what a CLU was. I didn't know anything. So I'm saying accelerated learning is I've never talked this talk before, but I think everybody's got to learn what you're teaching, because we're in the first time that you don't have time to go back to college. You don't have time to go to university, maybe not even trade school. You got to decide, hey, I'm going to learn it and figure it out. Are you and I on the same page on that one?
I 100% agree. A friend of mine who's actually in the business of getting people to write books, Tucker Max of Scribe, wrote a kind of blurb for my book. And he said something that I think is really, really prescient. He said, every knowledge worker in the world in the next 5 years is going to have one of 2 conversations. One is, you're invaluable and how can we keep you on the team? And the other is, your skills have been automated. and I think that's profoundly true. I think the pace of change is more rapid than ever before. And the bar is so much higher for what humans do versus software algorithms. And so now, if you're not constantly reinventing yourself, you're finding yourself obsolete in a very real sense.
I first of all, I agree with everything that you just said, and I say it differently, but I say, his said, either your skills are invaluable. I say, look, compensation comes, according to Ralph Waldo Emerson, 3 things. What is your ability to do it? How much need is there for what you do? And how have you broadcasted so you're the most valuable player? In other words, I'm going to argue that Elon Musk is one of the geniuses of our time, and nobody would argue. But I got an idea. There are other people as smart as him, but no one is as good at publicity as him. other than maybe the president of the United States, because he is in the news every day. I mean, he and Richard Branson and I are good friends. Richard and I are good friends. But Richard says, look, Mark, I spend 40% of my time broadcasting what I'm doing or going to do. And I said, holy cow. I mean, you understand that's a big chunk of, here's a guy
huge,
grossing $21 billion with 421 companies, Richard Branson. And here you got Elon Musk, who I admire totally, but everyone thinks, well, he's just Tesla. No, he's Tesla. He's going into space. He's doing Neuralink. He's doing, the guy is, to use a Jewish term, a mensch. He's got it together, knows he's got it together, and his results are clicking. And people keep betting against him. And now he says, because I'm also in the alternative energy business, I'm certainly not a competitor of his. We use some of his products, but he's got a brand new battery that's going to come out that's going to last 1 million hours. Well, you understand that is going to be another game changer for the world. And let me go to the biggest thing, because you asked about my book, and I've sidetracked myself a little bit, but every depression had breakthroughs that have changed the world. The 1898 depression in America, which crushed America at that time, we came out of it with 4 things that no one thinks about. We came out with the automobile, Henry Ford. We came out with the telephone with Alexander Graham Bell. We came out with electricity with Edison. And 2 little bicycle guys, Orville and Wilbur, create planes that now do it, well, up until the lockdown, did trillions of dollars a year. And we need to get back moving again is what my position is. I've over-answered your question, but I sure hope you didn't mind.
Oh, there's no such thing as over-answer. You're making my job easy. My job is to get, interesting morsels out of your many years of experience. So tell me more about the process of asking. You mentioned Tony Robbins. I know a friend of mine, Stephen Spencer, who's been on the show, always likes to remind me of Tony Robbins' question. You ask better questions, you get better answers. Tell me the principle behind ask. I know there's 3 components that you'd mentioned previously. Who do we ask, and what do we ask, and what are we asking for?
Okay, Sue, I love all of it. And by the way, what Tony's quote is good, and I think mine's better, and that is, the size of your question determines the size of your results. So if we're doing it just from a monetary point of view, and there's lots of metrics, but we'll use that one first, is that if you say, well, how am I going to, if you come up to me and say, I want to get rich, I want more money, great, Jonathan, here's a quarter. You now got more money, but that isn't what you really wanted. So I say you got to be very specific. Do you want to make 100,000, a million? And in today's world, becoming a millionaire is nice, but it's not enough. To be a real millionaire, you got to have about 10 million. So you need to set higher goals. And what we're teaching and asking is, set these higher advanced goals. Because the best, like I told you earlier, the best thing you can do for the poor is not be one of them. I learned from Mike. But the point is, you and I are here to be expansive. We're here to be creative. We're here to grow, just like a little kid knows how to ask who, what, where, when, why, and then they get crushed out and say, quit asking so many questions, Jonathan. You're just a little busybody. You ask questions too much. You may not have heard that personally, but a lot of kids do. And then you go to school and they say, sit there and just learn this and regurgitate it, and you'll get out of here, kid. And that isn't what you want. And then if you go in the military, the same thing. And if you go in business, they say, just do as you're told and you'll go fine here. And that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to think. We're supposed to receive. We're supposed to grow. And when you ask a question, you have illumination. You have insight. You have wisdom. And the principle is you can't ask a question. I learned it when I was walking around with Bucky Fuller one day, and he said, you can't ask a question without getting an answer. Like, what kind of tree is that? And 3 days later, somebody will say, that walnut tree is just the most beautiful tree, don't you think? And the answer is guaranteed. The law of attraction says every question you ask, you get an answer. So you want to ask the right questions, like Tony said, to get the right result right here and right now.
I love that. I've actually never heard that in all my years of personal development and spirituality, that every question has to get an answer. You did touch on the law of attraction, and I want to circle back on that because earlier you mentioned something that I also agree with. I believe in the law of attraction, but you also commented that you can't get any results without massive action. Share with me, I mean, you're known so much for so many of your short stories which deal with the kind of magic of life. Law of attraction, law of action. Tell me your perspective on it.
Well, first of all, birds of a feather flock together, and the law of attraction is a law of universe. It's not a Mark law or a Jonathan law. It's a law. And so I went through a horrific, painful divorce. And so I told a couple of my friends, I'll never get married again. But I said, well, what the hell? I'll write what I really got to have. And, the trouble is when you're 16 or 21, you go, oh, I want a hot babe if you're a man. And if you're a woman, I want them tall, dark, and handsome, and maybe rich, right? And straight, or whatever you want. But most people don't do it in depth. So I wrote down 267 things I needed in my ideal wife. I mean, the values, the characters, the virtues, the values. She had to have her own money. If she had kids, our kids had to get along. We had to have the same spiritual values. She had to love to travel. She had to love me and love my business. I had to love her and her business and her friends and all her parents, because that's the people you're going to spend the rest of your life with. So anyhow, when I met Crystal, I never told her until way after we were married, but I showed her the list and she was 267 out of 267. And I put them all in Chicken Soup for the 20th Anniversary Sold book. So, I've shown all I've got. And most people go, boy, I was too superficial in what I asked. That's what I'm saying. Even, Bill Gates says in the short term, we want too much, but in the long term, we don't ask for enough. And what our book Ask is doing, I'm saying, hey, look, everybody, universally, pretty much you can go to Amazon and get a copy of Ask, The Bridge from Your Dreams to Your Destiny. We're asking to get one. But then somebody said to me, hey, look, all these people, because of this lockdown, are despondent, disconsolate, depressed, and we have the highest amount of suicides ever. So what I want you to do is go and buy 10 of Mark's books and give them away to those people that are hurting, that are ailing, that are in pain right now. And then after that, we said, well, what can we do to help everybody? So Crystal, after you get a book, send it to reception at Mark Victor Hansen, and we're going to invite you to come to the askthebookclub.com to learn how to be a master asker, along with people literally from around the world. I mean, here we are, in the Middle East, so to speak. But I've been doing these podcasts over the last 4 or 5 months, selling more books than anybody, I'm told by my publisher, again, because I'm willing to take massive action to get massive results, because I want to help millions of people literally everywhere. And we've been all over Australia and all over Africa and all over Europe and Canada and America, and Latin America. It astounds me. And reception is been so phenomenal. And people are getting results, because I believe I won't write a book that's not unique. Number 2, transformative. And number 3, inevitable, that if the reader gets it, they're going to have that massive transformation if they'll read it and do it. And we're saying, hey, look, get a book like Ask and go over it with your spouse or your business partners and go through every question in all 3 zones, yourself, others, and God. And I'd like to go deep on God if you're okay with it.
Please, by all means.
So when Jack and I didn't have the right title for Chicken Soup for the Soul, we said, look, we'll do a thought command. We'll go into our respective homes. He lived in Santa Barbara. I live in Newport Beach, and 400 times say mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title, mega best-selling title. Well, back to what I said is that once you program your mind to some depth of being, right, a thought command, it's called in psychiatry, you're going to wake up in the middle of the night. And we say, look, you better have pencil and paper next to you. And what I'm saying to the average person out there that just got fired especially and is hanging on by their fingernails, Jonathan, you need to ask yourself, God, what's your destiny for me? God, what's your destiny for me? God, what's your destiny for me? It's going to show up, but it shows up at a weird time. So tell your spouse or sweetheart, hey, I'm going to wake up, turn on the lights, and I got to write this out in depth. Mark said, got it. Jack calls me at 2:58 in the morning and said, Chicken Soup. I said, for the soul. We both got goosebumps and knew it. Now, we didn't know 144 publishers would be ignorant of our brilliance and turn us down. But the point of the matter is that we knew that it would work. And now that we sold 500 million plus books, we say, hey, I think it's going to work. Does that make sense? You've got to command yourself before you go to sleep. What's your destiny? Everybody listening has a destiny. Now, if you need a new business, you say, God, what's my perfect ideal business now? What problem can I solve now and make a fortune? What problem can I solve now and make a fortune? Because if you're going to make money, if you're going to do anything with your time and trade your time for something with accelerated learning, you ought to have accelerated income, which I call exponential income, and I'm sure you'll go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, what are some of the other superhuman hacks that have allowed you to perform so well in a number of careers, from entrepreneurship to public speaking to writing so many books? How do you perform at such a high level, Mark?
Okay, so first let's go to the marketing part of that tripartite question and say that What I did different than anybody else is I looked at who the best-selling authors were in fiction and nonfiction. So I wrote them all down, and I interviewed the 101 best-selling authors in fiction and nonfiction. In nonfiction, like I'll just pick one, Scott Peck. He'd gone to Harvard with Jack. He was a psychiatrist, rode 58 weeks. He was number one with A Road Less Traveled. I interviewed Scott, and I just went, wow, I don't want to know how to write. I know how to write, Scott. Just tell me, what did you do to market that no one else has ever done? And so what I did is I wrote a wall of a business plan, Jonathan, that covered everything every one of these guys did. And we submitted those business plans to every one of the publishers that turned us down, and they all said, oh, nobody does all that. Well, that's right. They don't do it because they didn't think of it, and they didn't write it down. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have a path and a trajectory. And so one of the hacks was that you have to do bypass marketing, is what I call it. And we went to Coca-Cola, which is, whether you're opposed to it or not, it's not the objective. The point is they sell more beverages than anybody. So we said, let's just test your people. And people who drink Coca-Cola do not read. People who drink Diet Coke read. And they wanted to raise money. This is called cause-related charity. So I asked them, I said, could we go on the side of your real estate on a six-pack of Diet Coke for 6 months, and whatever books we sell, we'll give back to you. And I got Nora Roberts, who's one of the great female fiction writers. She wrote a book called Hidden Riches. We at the time had a book called Chicken Soup for the Romantic Soul. We were on the side of 50 million Diet Coke cases. We sold enough books to get 15,000, 15,000 kids into Boys and Girls Clubs. And then we were number one like crazy. The point I'm making is that we did bypass marketing. We did a real hack to break through. Everybody else says, all you got to do is 20 city book tours, sign at the 20 biggest bookstores. And I go, that won't give you lasting success. You got to be consistent, insistent, persistent. You got to think bigger, better, stronger, bolder, and different. And so I did that. And then I did that. Do you want me to go on?
Yeah, by all means.
So in mathematics, do you happen to know the math? A negative times a negative is a
positive.
Positive, right. So I was training in 4 marketplaces, one of which is chiropractic, and the money the Clinton had pulled all insurance money out of chiropractic. So chiropractic, 77,000 doctors seeing 25 million patients a month were going into the drain. And I love these guys and ladies. They were just wonderful to me. And I was talking to them. They gave me 3 of my 10 honorary doctorates, all kinds of stuff was just happening. And simultaneously, Elizabeth Dole at the American Red Cross said, hey, Mark, we're out of blood. And you have all these great ideas, and you're willing to do stuff nobody's willing to do, and you think different. Can you give me blood? I said, Ms. Dole, when do you need it? Said, yesterday. I said, boy, that's good. I said, let's get it from doctors. They see blood and guts every day, the MD doctors. And said, no, they've already said no to me. I said, well, great. Look, I work in chiropractic. I understand the philosophy. These guys and ladies and I are close friends. I would like to ask them to call 800 Give Life, the Blood Mobile, and we'll have them drive up and we'll reactivate their old patients. And so we wrote all the doctors. This is before email. And almost all of them said, yeah, we'll reactivate our old patients. If they get a pint of blood, they get a free adjustment, whether it's activator gun or by hand. And it worked. And we got 1.5 years worth of cryogenically blood. But the month that we did it, we sold 1.5 million books in a month rather than 1.5 million in a year. And it was just crazy because the doctors all said, oh, my friend Mark Victor Hansen and Jack, those guys are just doing it. And they're the ones getting the blood for America, because there's no such thing, Mark told me, as pseudo blood. And then I did stories about, if your kid is in a car accident and goes, it doesn't matter if you're rich, famous, well-connected, and the doctor loves you. If there's no blood in the end, your kid's dead, because if you soak out anything over 7 of 9 pints of blood, you're SOL, situation on luck.
Wow.
Does that make sense? So I
totally
took
makes sense.
The Red Cross was out of blood. The chiropractors were out of business. I put them 2 together, and then I taught the chiropractors. I forgot that one little element. I interviewed, it was December of the year, and I took a week and I interviewed the 21 doctors that made $1 million or more cash practice a year. Like one guy in Denver, Dr. Dennis Nikitow, he said, look, I built this practice with rubber bands. I carry a pocket full of rubber bands. I said, what the hell has that got to do with chiropractic? And he said, I'd take a rubber band, I put it around the index finger and tie it until the finger starts to turn colors. Jonathan, if you took a rubber band around your index finger and it starts turning colors, what color does it turn if it's got a tourniquet on it?
Purple or blue?
Purple, blue, and then finally it goes black and falls off. Now, then he says to the would-be patient, if he's sitting in an airport or wherever he's sitting at lunch or at a cafe or restaurant or got a waiter or waitress, says, so can a medical doctor get rid of that? They say no. Can a PT, a physical therapist, get rid of it? No. Can a massage therapist? And he goes through a litany of 12 people, and they say, nope, they can't. Only one person, only one kind of doctor, a doctor of cause, a doctor of chiropractic can get rid of it. And he built this giant practice. Well, suddenly I sold $3 million worth of those tapes, and everybody listened to him. And that's why I teach in my book, You Have a Book in You. Everyone can interview in their niche and make a fortune, because nobody knows niches and what works at any given time. And what is shifted is working at any given time right now is shifted faster than it's ever done. So I ask everyone to go to my website, markvictorhansen.com, and see this thing about interviewing, because we need to have the poignant, pregnant, accelerated information out there, bigger, better, faster than we've ever had it. I hope you'll agree with that.
I completely agree. And that's a fantastic segue. You have so many different books. You have different websites, different causes you're involved with. Where should we send people to engage with you and act on everything they've learned in this episode?
I'd love them to go to markvictorhansen.com and then get some free stuff there. We even give a free book called How to Be Up in Down Times. I wrote with Mitzi Purdue, who I'm going to encourage you to interview sometime, because she only does 22 million chickens a week. They're organic and, wow, grass-fed and all that good stuff. But I'd love you to go to Amazon and buy You Have a Book in You, because everybody has got, you've already written 3, you said, but I'm telling you, you've got 100 books in front of you. A, you're young, and B, you're going to start seeing stuff, hopefully after our little dialogue here, that you never saw before. At least that's my dream. My vision is not to make you any different than you are, but to widen your scope, because every one of your books can help and get to people that nobody else can get to, Jonathan. But that's true of everyone listening and watching and being with us, because the possibilities are infinite, because there's, out of 8 billion people, there's 4 billion not in our equation yet of having enough water, food, energy. Yep. And the only way we get there is the few of us, and boy, it's a dangerous statement, but let's assume that 15% of us are leaders. Like, you're a visionary leader that leads, and I'm proud of you and thankful for our new friendship. But it's a few of us that got to catalyze the rest of us. At least that is my philosophical, practical, and personal position. And if you see it different, you can say, well, we don't want everyone in the equation.
I agree with you.
There are some leaders. There are a lot of leaders in the world that are despots that don't want everyone. They want to have human slaves. I want to get rid of every level of slavery. I want to get everyone to be free. And that's why, books are one of the ways. These podcasts are one of the ways. Listening to uplifting audios that I've done or videos that I've done are a transformation out of lack, limitation, and shortage into understanding there's fundamental abundance in the universe, and there's more than enough for all of us. There's not enough for
completely agree.
There's more than enough for need.
I completely agree. Mark, so we're going to put those links in the show notes for everyone to check out. Before I let you go, I have one question I always ask, and it's a tough one. If people walk away with one big message from this episode, we talked about so many different things. What would you hope for that big message to be?
That if you get our principle in asking, you can fulfill your destiny and source and serve universe and humanity at levels you can't even imagine, have a more wondrous, exciting, abundant, and opportune life than ever.
I love it. Mr. Mark Victor Hansen, thank you so much for sharing your time and energy with me today. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch.
Ditto. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks for tuning in to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit superhuman.blog. While you're at it, please take a moment to share this episode with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.